I just was chatting with somebody earlier, and they quoted the phrase, well, when we started this whole thing, it was in the pursuit of a more perfect union. More perfect. What that means is, it's not perfect. That's what that means.
About a half an hour ago, I knew we're going to do this interview,
Right.
and it just suddenly dawned on me, in the usual suspects,
Right.
in the lineup, you're the crazy guy. and this is indelibly this moment, right? You know what I'm talking. Everyone knows what I'm talking
well,
about.
I use bad language in the film, so I won't
yeah,
do it now. But the
yeah.
usual suspects, the opening of the film is the police lineup, kind of towards the beginning.
Yeah.
And I say, "Give me the keys."
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it's an amazing moment in the film.
Yeah.
Because that was one of the scenes we filmed early on in Usual Suspects.
Right.
Director Brian Singer at the time would roll the camera during rehearsals.
Okay.
Just to see what pieces he could get to use in the movie, which is kind of crazy. If you're an actor, that's really not fair. You know, like we're waiting for action for when you're filming.
Right.
But there was a great moment where I say that craziness, remember? And then Benicio del Toro's character starts to laugh. And then I punch him, and he punches me back. That was a rehearsal.
I see.
That the director filmed, and I'll never forget the director explaining to me. He said, Stephen, even though you're in a police lineup and these guys are criminals, in that moment you see they know each other. They're friends. Because it was like a little bonding thing for the audience.
I see.
But isn't it cool that it came out of a very improvisational, spontaneous moment?
Right. No, that's an amazing story. I had no idea, but it's just amazing that, you know, all these years after this film came out, that moment is stuck in my mind because it's so intense.
And then, of course,
right?
the film went on to win 2 Academy Awards for the writer, first and foremost, Chris McQuarrie.
Yeah.
Best original screenplay. He now does all of the Mission Impossible films with Tom Cruise.
Okay. I also didn't know that, so I'm being educated
lots of
here.
Success and growth.
But so, you know, Hollywood, of course, you know, you've come out of Hollywood. You're in Hollywood still, but there was this big shift in your life at some point, right? Like your values changed.
Well, yeah, but now it's been quite a while now as a born-again Christian. Meaning, yes, you're correct. I was fully in the Hollywood scene, youngest Baldwin brother, just starting a TV show I did 25 years ago called The Young Riders for ABC. It was about the Pony Express. Josh Brolin was in it, who's now one of the big Marvel guys, and all this kind of stuff.
Yes, of course.
But that was when I was first married. This June 10th, I celebrate 30 years of marriage, which in Hollywood, it's like dog years. It's kind of, you get bonus points for doing it in Hollywood.
I shouldn't be laughing, but I
praise the Lord.
Yeah.
But back then, I'm living in Arizona. I was 24, 25 years old, making more money than I ever made in my life. My wife, Kenya, who's from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, after our first daughter, Alaya, was born, hired a nanny through her family in Brazil to come move from Brazil and work with us in Arizona as a, help around the house and help with the baby and all that kind of stuff. Well, that woman's name was Augusta, and she was a born-again Christian. And she prayed about it before she accepted the job to come over to America to work with us. And she said she heard from God, and God told her that if she came to work for me and my wife, we would become Christians in the future and be involved in ministry. Which at the timing of that, this was utterly absurd. I'm going to fast forward. My second daughter, Haley, was born. We moved back to New York from Arizona. My wife started going to a very spicy Brazilian born-again church in New York City. And she became a Christian. 1 year later, I followed her, but I got to slow down there. 1 year later, I got saved after the events of 9/11. But my story was much more impacted in witnessing my wife's conversion for that year before me. I watched my wife already been married to her at this point in time for 10 years. But I just watched her very gently, never pointed a finger at me and said, you better do this, you better read your Bible, you better, go to church. She never did that. She focused on her journey because the Holy Spirit had said to her, if you focus on me, we'll get him too. So that's kind of what happened. In her transformation, that affected me, and then 9/11 came, and I kind of just, that was the thing for me that just said, things are getting a little too crazy here. So I went to God for the answer, and I found it. And the answer was Jesus. And it works for me.
Interesting. I don't know what your value set looked like, you know, but typically when you hear about Hollywood, it's sort of like, you know, anything goes in Hollywood, right? And so
that's
these
true.
traditional, you know, whichever, whether it's Christian or other traditional value systems, it's a very, very different world, right?
Well,
I'm
but
curious
I think
about this.
To be fair, I think that the value system that we agree to is really much more prevalent in Hollywood than you realize.
Okay.
You know, there's more family values and tradition and parents, you know, taking their kids to school. And I'm not talking about unique lifestyles or different lifestyles or any of that, which is why Gary Sinise's organization, Friends of Abe, was as successful as it was for, I mean, I think it got up to like 3,000 or 4,000 members of conservatives in Hollywood.
Right.
Writers, producers, people who work on the set. There's more people out in Hollywood that actually, I shouldn't say agree with Trump, but rather don't agree with Bernie. So I say all that because I'm this very strange dichotomy that can live in both these worlds.
Okay.
You know, and
how's that?
Well, right now it's pretty good, only because I believe what's happening in all of the exposure of what's happening in politics now. I think you have a lot of undecided people of whatever, not just voters, not just undecided people of faith, not just people who, there's a lot of Americans in the middle who are going to vote that are just like, hey, let those people have rights, and why shouldn't those people have rights too? But then when you say socialist to them, they go, hey, whoa, wait a second. See my point?
Right.
Now you're opening a can of worms here with Bernie that's got even the people that were in favor of some of these ideas that are now saying, hey, wait a second, guys. This is, I don't agree with this idea, and I don't believe it's America. I had somebody say to me yesterday, you pay your taxes, Stephen, and that goes to making roads, and that goes to healthcare, and so it's partially socialist. I went, no, it's not. That's not socialist. There's a difference as the democratic socialist movement in America tries to continue what it's doing. It's trying to warp the perception really of who we are, our traditions, our family values. We are a Christian Judeo nation built upon that, that has allowed for whatever change works within that system. Not the Judeo-Christian part of it, but we should all have the same religious rights and freedoms. And I had somebody say to me not too long ago, a couple years ago, hey man, how come you don't agree with this one minority in America that wants equal rights regarding marriage? I said, I think those folks should be able to do whatever they want, but they shouldn't be able to go into the Catholic Church and tell the Catholic Church you need to change your doctrine in order to accommodate what we think is fair. And I think the Catholic Church agrees with that. America's a wonderful place, because if you want equality, you can go start your own church and then have whatever equality you want. Now, I've had some people look at me like I got three heads when I say stuff like that. But now you are clearly seeing, and I'm not a real smart academia type guy, okay? But now you're clearly seeing the fairness and common sense of the Constitution living and breathing in America. It's a system built up so that when a majority of enough people don't agree and want the country to go this way, the system corrects itself. That's what we're seeing now under Donald Trump's presidency.
Fascinating. You know, I'm Canadian, by the way, and I've been learning over the past 10 years about the American system, and it just something that struck me, one day, or was pointed out to me, I think, is that actually the people that started, let's call it the American project, right, so to speak, that led to the Declaration of Independence. Ultimately, these were people that a lot of them had escaped from religious persecution themselves.
Right.
They were looking for religious liberty, but among themselves they didn't agree.
Right.
So they had to come up, in fact, vociferously so in some cases, right? So they had to come up with a system. Of course, they shared this Judeo-Christian heritage, most of them, but they had to come up with a system where no one version would dominate and control the others. I mean, and that's the sense I get, that's what they tried to create, which is, speaks to exactly what you're talking about. I mean,
I just was chatting with somebody earlier, and they quoted the phrase, well, when we started this whole thing, it was in the pursuit of a more perfect union. More perfect. What that means is, it's not perfect. That's what that means.
right.
It's not
Well,
perfect, and
what
it's
is, right?
But
Yeah,
but see how you just simply went, yeah. But the problem is now, you have a movement in America that says it's not perfect for everyone, and this is how we deem it'll be perfect. It's not fair that 1% of the minority isn't equal to that 99% in the fairness. I'm sorry, my friend, you're wrong. That's why they, have the system set up the way it is. We will never be able to balance it for all the little 1%, will we? It'll never be perfect for all the little 1%. But how do we collectively, lovingly communicate about how it becomes that thing? A more perfect union is the goal.
Right.
Because it'll never be perfect, never.
Any final words before we finish up?
Yes, I think you're terrific, and I love this whole organization, and I subscribe to the newspaper. It gets delivered to my house, and I have the app, and I have all the stuff, and I think it's great, and I can't believe I just did an interview with you, because I think you guys are great.
And I'm not even paying you for that. Thank you.
But that's why you guys are wonderful, and you keep growing.
I appreciate it.